Hello, everybody. Welcome back to DND404. I am your DM, Tony, and joined with me today is DM Jared.
That's
Jared,
me.
How's it going, Jared? How you feeling?
Oh, just missing two individuals in this podcast. But you know what? We're going to power through.
I feel like it always falls on us in some way. You know what I'm saying?
You know it does.
You gotta carry,
It's the burden we bear.
Well, there are a number of vacations this week, and although we are very excited to pick the adventure back up on a hard cliffhanger, we are dedicated to you. So what we're going to be doing today is that in our Discord, which you can find a link down below, is that we asked our community, ask a DM a question that you have, not necessarily for me, but to anybody who is DM'd on DND404, and we will answer them. And how we're going to do this episode is that we're going to take your questions and we're going to answer them from the perspective of a veteran DM and a newbie DM. As you may know, Jared has DM'd a number of one-shots on the channel, and we're going to get the perspectives from both sides of the coin.
You can count that number almost on one hand.
Very, very new, but you've learned a lot.
I have learned a lot. I feel like I have. I think I could speak to the newbie people for sure.
Every session that you've DM'd has been a significant jump.
I've learned a lot.
Yes, there's been
time.
hurdles have been leaped.
But before we get to that, we forgot one important thing that we do on every podcast.
That's right. The format's a little skewed, but we are the two. We are here. The other two-player board games on my board game shelf. Starting with the flippity flop roll the dice, Jared.
What's going on, guys? Jared, the DM, checking in this time. See, we got to keep the format, even though we've already introduced. We got to keep doing it. But my game of choice is Star Wars Rebellion. It's right there, and those on the video podcast can see it. It's right there. It's amazing. Let me set the groundwork for you. It is the entire trilogy of the original Star Wars in a board game with the perfect thematic setting of everything. So basically, the rebels have to hide a base in a big star system. Rebel forces are patrolling each turn, trying to figure it out. There's fighting that happens. There's sabotage. There's betrayal. You can get big characters. It's amazing. It is the best two-player game, and also the best thematic game true to its source that I've ever played. It's so good. Very lot of moving pieces, so it's definitely a heavier game, but love it. But
before I get to my game, I have to ask, because it's on Star Wars, it's a co-op against the board game.
It's one people plays the Imperial and the other plays the Rebels.
Oh, okay.
So you're versus, but it's super fun. Yeah.
There was a game I used to play back. I think it came out in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s. I forget the year. I honestly forget the title of it, but it was a Star Wars board game where you, the players, I think it's up to 5, were playing against the board. But if you were converted to the dark side, then you're playing against the other players.
Ooh.
But the game came with a VHS tape. So you had to put the VHS tape onto the TV and you have to play against the clock. And every 15 minutes, Darth Vader will come on. But you play as rebels and you're trying to plant a bomb on the Death Star. And the whole board looks like a Death Star. It actually is 3 tiers up. So cool. And if you win, you skip to the ending, happy scene. But if you fail, is the whole length of the VHS tape. And there's cards that convert you to the dark side. So then you have to go against your ally. It was so cool. But it was it's not a 2-player game, but you just reminded me of that. And I'm going to look up the name of the game in a few.
I just want to be in the room where you beat the game and you get the happy ending, but then you have to fast forward the tape past all the bad stuff. Be like, yeah, we didn't. None of that happened. Here's the good stuff.
So the most the game could last was an hour and 30 minutes. I think if you didn't finish the game within an hour 30, then the bad ending happened because things are exploding and it tells you how to alter the board.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
That's awesome. But what's your 2-player board game of your choice? What do you got?
Now, my board game repertoire is not as expansive as yours. It's very limited, so be easy on my choice. But mine's going to be One Deck Dungeon. It's a 2-player game. It can be solo, but it does focus on 2 players, and it's really cool. It's just like a card game. It's like a classic dungeon crawler. Uses a lot of dice, and you and a buddy crawl through a dungeon, and you're trying to get to the bottom level and fight bosses. And it's actually a pretty challenging game. It's got a couple expansions. They have a Steam port for it if you want to play it virtually. It's pretty good. I like it. Me and Dan have actually played it a few times on the way to your house when we went to go play. When we went to come visit, we would play at the airport or the night before, waiting for the flight.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's awesome.
1-deck dungeon.
Heck yeah. If you guys have any recommendations for 2-player games, leave them down in the comments. Let me know. Let me know what you got. Board games. Let's talk about them.
And if you know what Star Wars game I'm talking about,
oh yeah,
please put it in there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be looking for that for next week.
Someone look that up.
It's so cool.
Get on that. I want to see this VHS tape. Yo, does what's the actor Earl Jones? Is he actually voicing?
Oh, it's so old I don't remember.
I doubt it. He's too busy with
it
the Lion
came
King
out
at that
when
point, I'm sure.
it came out like early. It's the trilogy. It's before the new Star Wars movies came, or like episode 1, 2, 3 came out. It was so it could have been earlier than the 90s. But let's get into today's episode. So before we start reading off questions, little background about us. I am considered the veteran DM of the podcast. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since I was 13, 14 years old, and I've been DMing since high school, which is like 14 years now. The first 10 years were on and off. There's a little breaks in between, and then there's, college partying. But I was DMing on and off until much more recently, where I've been DMing consecutively for 4 years. It had long stretches in between from when I started to now. And Jared, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your Dragons experience?
Yeah, as far as playing, I've been playing for 3 going on 4 years now, which has been great. I've DM'd a few times, but I will say I definitely have big ideas that I think I can bring in that I don't think many DMs normally go into. They are usually pretty big, but I think that I got a unique twist that I can bring to some of these questions. So yeah,
looking forward to hearing about them. So here's what we're gonna do. We have taken a number of questions asked by the community in our Discord. All these questions are from our Discord. You'll see them pop up as we ask them. And if you want to be a part of the conversation, go ahead and click the Discord link down below. Join us. Come say hi. Come hang out. Sometimes we do game nights. Sometimes we just chit chatter. And like right now, I'm really big on Pokemon Pocket, and we just like to talk about that in the group chat. And
I will say, outside of normal Discords that you may join, we are still a very small podcast. Like, I know the numbers, you may see that 500 plus 5-star reviews, but that is just
almost
true.
600. Jared, check
Hey,
yourself.
I said plus.
Check
I said
yourself.
plus. I'm losing count these days. Sorry, I forgot that we had an extra 100 in the tank. But my point is that we're still small, we're still growing, and we read all those messages. So if you join the Discord, it's not that you're just going to be talking and nobody. We got a tight knit group, and also you're going to be talking directly to us. So join it up.
So let's go ahead and kick this off. And Jared, I'll start with the first question, and we're gonna bounce off each other. This first question comes from Jetty Betty. When coming up with a great plot twist, what's the best way to not accidentally spoil it to your friends and players?
Ooh, this is a tough one. So, the last one that I DM'd with Tony and Dan, I was giddy about it forever because I was just like, oh my gosh, I could build whatever I want. I'm going to go nuts. I'm going to have this mechanic in there. And I was like, the entire time, I'm so excited, but then I can't bounce any ideas. So normally I'd be like, oh, hey, let me get with Tony to make sure that like this isn't running too long, which inevitably did happen. Or, oh, let me check and see, like, is this encounter really needing, stuff like that. So it was a little tough for me to not spoil it. But I think it's, as far as my point, or where I come from in that situation, I'm just so excited to finally show the thing that I created. but I'm sure in larger campaign that was just like a one shot. I'm sure in larger campaigns it's got to be just agony. But what about you, Tony? What do you think about this?
It's definitely tricky to handle. However, you do want your players to discover essentially spoil it themselves. And the key here is breadcrumbs. Let them figure it out. And if there's like a major thing that you want them to be like, oh my god, like that oh crap moment, make it where the gotcha is a number of sessions away from like its initial reveal, so enough time passes where players not necessarily forgotten about it, but it's in the back of their mind. So like if you're trying to reveal like this character who's a happy shopkeeper and they turned out to be the evil backstabbing villain, you want to make sure there's a couple of sessions in between with
Callbacks.
a couple with small callbacks in between that aren't necessarily spoilery. So like,
yeah, you want them to solve the mystery. Like, you know what I mean? So the reveal isn't the payoff, it's them figuring it out is the payoff. Moving to the next question.
Hit me.
All right. This is from Bjorn. What do you do or did do to get over any pre-game / pre-recording jitters?
Honestly, just we would talk, before every single session. Kind of like, hang out, see how everybody's doing, making sure everybody's like having a good day, checking in with everybody, sharing a couple of funny videos and a few jokes. You really want to get everybody laughing, and then once everybody's like on the same page and same mindset, it's really easy to go from there. When I do like solo games, like when I used to run games at local game shops with people I didn't know, a lot of times what I would do is like invite people to go get drinks first from the vending machine or whatever, and like talk to them about what they're drinking and like, oh, does that give you like energy? Just how does that relate to your character? Try to like lean their choice into like what they're about to do in the session. And that kind of gets like people in the gaming mindset. So it's really just try asking them like questions, maybe about like what they're wearing. And when someone's like comfortable talking to you, I feel like it's when I'm the most comfortable and ready to play. That's how I get my jitters out. What about you, Jared?
It's tough. I get so excited. Like I don't even like I can't even like think correctly. So I have this hard problem even when like where I'm so excited that I can't even like read the lines that I've written, and it's like, almost like test anxiety, type of thing. You're finally put on the spot and you're just like but like in my mind I've been working on this thing for like 2 weeks straight, like picking up images and things like that. So yeah, it's tough. I think practicing like out loud, like on your own, is like, it seems silly, but that kind of helped out when I was trying to record everything. The other thing that I did that helped out, which I don't suggest this for everyone, but it helped me because we run a podcast, I just wanted it to run well, is that I pre-recorded a lot of this stuff just in case I was running into that, just because we run a podcast. And having that pre-recorded like exposition or like intro and things like that set the tone enough to where the rest of it kind of made it easier to then go from there, which was cool because it's like nailing the theme, the concepts and stuff like that. I don't suggest it for everyone, but it was that's how much into the jitters I was, that I was like, I really want this to go well. Like, what is some of my options? But luckily I had that to fall back on. But
preemptively countering the jitters before they happen.
Yes.
With the recordings. Yeah, you have like pre-recorded stuff, which is a good, honestly, it makes it so you don't want to forget the details, which is like huge. Sometimes you have a whole session, it's like, oh, I forgot to do that one thing that's like super important and pertinent to the story. Yeah. It's a good idea.
I think with my case, just to hit it home even further, I think with mine is just, since I haven't done it so much, I still have those jitters, and I think that that's where Bjorn's coming from. And doing that was more of a crutch than it is a fix. But I think once you get some more games, once I get some games under my belt, I'll feel a little bit more comfortable. But
this next question comes from the galaxy, man. The whole Milky Way. Okay. What do you believe is the best mix between main story and character story? Would it be 50-50? Would this change depending on the severity of the main story for a future campaign you create?
Interesting. I don't know how to answer this because I haven't done.
I can see how. Yeah, this is definitely a tough one to ask you off the bat. I will agree.
Yeah, I don't know what I would do. I think the thing that I did in the last one, and I'll use that as a thing, is that I made the characters not the main story, so that if we did expand on that like universe type of thing, that it has so many ways that it can grow without like impeding on other things.
May I rephrase it another way? Because I will say,
one-shots are
one-shots are a completely different beast, and really don't have any character development within them, unless like it's like someone's birthday. It's like, this one's about you, you know. Mm-hmm. But as a player, from a standpoint of a player, with our current campaign, how do you feel? How would you rank the current story? Like, do you think it's 50-50 backstory, character backstory with the campaign story? Do you feel like the campaign story overrides the characters, or vice versa? Like, speak for a player on this one.
I think Armos is different because I feel like he's so interlinked with the main story that it's a little tough. I think his is probably skewed more, towards the main story than it is like the character. I feel like there is a lot of character stuff that's going on there, but like if you take like Minas and Drell, I think it's skewed in the main story more than the character. Like, but I think it's just because of how it's built currently.
I don't want to toot my own horn. I kind of did that on purpose, but I'll get into that in a second.
But I mean, it worked out because like none of us know what we were doing. I was at the beginning. I was like, I have no idea where this guy's gonna go, but it is something to think about. I guess I haven't really thought about it. I'm like having my first like real think about like, because I mean I guess can't they all be just one and the same? But then I think of like Minus's story is very kind of off on his own, but it kind of wraps in a little bit. I don't know. It's a little tough. What would you rate the story and the characters?
So personal experience, I would say the perfect split of main campaign to player backstory, and I say this with everyone's player backstory in mind, is 70-30. 70% being the main campaign and 30% being backstory. And I'm not saying that 30% needs to be like its standalone 30%. It can be integral to the story, which is how I'm kind of doing it with you three. However, I think when it's so involved in somebody's backstory, that's when like I kind of get detached, because I'm like, well, I'm more concerned about the overarching problem. I would love to see how the character's backstory weave with the main story. And with that being said, like that's why I'm not so hot on Critical Role. No hate against Critical Role, but I definitely think they dive in where it's like, this is your backstory. Now this section arc is your backstory. That's how it comes off anyway. No issues with it. It's just not necessarily my...
Wait a minute. Isn't that what we did with Minas and Drell?
Yes. So they had their moments. However, they've been feeding into it the whole way. Yeah. What I did was give each of you guys a boss. That's what I did. But let's take Armos, for example. You gave me the amnesia storyline when we created your character, essentially. You gave me like a nice, like, hey, this is my expectation. But you did give me a blank slate with like a theme behind it.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So I used Armos as a catalyst to drive the main story, and essentially like, you have the quest arrow, you know, and you were like, you had the mission, and they just kind of joined in on it, only to realize that they are now a part of this story. Without too much spoilers, Minus's Hydra was affected by the big bad from the get-go. Drell's father was like was affected by the big bad from the get-go. And they only come to realize that they've been affected by the big bad by adventuring with you, the catalyst for the story, and that's how the three of you are intertwined. So although it may have been Minas' arc or Drell's arc, each of you still received backstory information, even though you weren't the highlighted character of that arc. So, face value, yeah, I kind of did do that, but that was only 2 arcs out of the whole. Yeah. We're on arc 8, and there was like 2 arcs that were dedicated. And I would say that arc 8 is Armos's arc, but
seems that way.
The first 5 were like a generic story with sprinkled in character. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, that's what I think is the perfect mix, is 70-30% split. And then, it's always good to plan for a future campaign, and I definitely have those things in mind. But don't, hold off something great for a campaign in the future that may not happen. Do the cool idea now, because more cool ideas will happen later. So try not to save anything. But if you want to add, a world marker for another campaign that could have, for another, in a future campaign, you could definitely work those in. But I would not use character stories for that.
All right. We got Jarvis MK 2LXL. Nailed it. Who has the manliest beard on the podcast? Who in the podcast has the manliest beard?
I'll tell you
now,
the manliest beard.
I'm gonna say I got a nice I don't know what you call this. It's not 5 o'clock shadow, but this is the perfect size. Any more than this, I look like I shouldn't be near school.
Oh,
so
okay. I know you're about to yuck my yum right now, dude.
No. I've said I'm opting out is what I'm trying to say. I've grown it out before. It grows in, not great for me. So it's full, but it's a little too not. It doesn't look good. I don't know. Dan does have. He grew his out for a while.
So just to answer the question, I have the manliest beard. However, Dan has been blessed by the hair gods himself. The genetics on that boy, it's not fair. You know when you look at somebody and you realize that they're God's favorites?
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I look at Dan. His hair genetics are just... If I didn't love him, I'd kill him, essentially. Right. But yeah, he can grow a beautiful beard. Beautiful beard.
That dude has never had a bad hair day. I'm positive. Positive. I think he wakes up that way, and I'm like, how, dude?
We've shared rooms before, and he wakes up with a perfectly coiffed head of hair. It's insane. It's unfair.
Yeah, for sure.
Our next question comes from Redfire 1800. DM, where did the idea for Reginald come from? Where did it come from, Jared?
That blank slate we were talking about? No, Tony had it. Well, I picked a warlock. I think that's literally where it first started from. I don't think I mentioned the rabbit. I think it was because you had the rabbits, right?
You came up. So I believe we came up with the name together, Reginald together. We were riffing off each other. We wanted them to have a highfalutin fancy name. You came up with the rabbit. Yes, at the time I had 2 bunnies. So you came up with a rabbit who craves blood lettuce. That was your pitch. And I'm like, oh, I can roleplay a rabbit real easy. I got 2 of them. And people think that Reginald is based off my black rabbit Bento, which is not the case. I actually got him a year later. And truth be told, I didn't even want him at first, but that's a long story within itself. But now we're bros. Me and Bento are bros. He's downstairs right now chilling. I just gave him snacks before we started recording. But yeah, it's actually the other way around. Jared came up with Reginald.
All right. Going to the next question. We got Ducky from the Discord. DM, what's your favorite character you've ever played? Oh, I know mine. Hands down. I can't wait.
My go-to character for one-shots, local one-shots, and even in the campaign is Novo, who's he's a wizard. He's a brass dragon-born wizard. He's big and fat, and he has a cookbook that's bigger than his spellbook. So fun to play. That's my favorite character, Novo. What's yours, Jared?
Those who listen to the podcast will maybe recognize Novo from certain episodes out there.
Oh, it's a Novo, yes. Yes.
So if you are a Patreon contributor and you go up to the top tier, we get together with everyone in that tier and we play each month we get together and play D&D with everybody, which is really cool. And I created an artificer, and I wanted to make a kobold, and so I made Sprocket Tail is his name, and it's so fun to play him because I riff off of the group, which is not something that Armos gets to do. Armos a lot of the time is trying to push, like Dan's kind of the comic relief, and then Alec is in there sometimes too, so I feel like Armos has to push the story along a lot of the time, so I don't get to like be the silly one. But with Sprocket, oh my gosh, so much fun. I'm having a great time. And then I'm just trying to look for little jabs or humor that I could throw in and sprinkle it in, but so far super fun.
As much as I hate artificers, I love Cog. Cog is a good balance.
Dan's Cog? Is that what you're talking about? Or Sprocket?
Oh, Sprocket. I'm sorry. Yeah, Dan plays the brother of Sprocket, Cog, who's a barbarian. Two kobolds with the same brain cell is how I put it. But yeah, Sprocketail. I hate artificers, but Sprocketail definitely makes me, tolerate them. Our next question comes from Athenis. Athenis. I'm gonna say
I think that's right.
DM, what is your?
That was the last we heard of.
What is your favorite part about being a DM, and would you rather be a DM or a player?
I think I could be way better at being a DM than I think I could be than being a player if I had the time. You know what I mean? Like, if we've spent 4 years, like 3-4 years, being a player on the podcast. I think if I had that same amount of time on it as a DM, I think I have just really cool ideas that I would like to try. I think that they would be really cool, and it's just stuff that I don't see other like when I go and look at other DM groups or like D&D groups, I don't see them doing like really innovative things like with fights or like boss mechanics or puzzles or like things like that. So I think I could bring a lot to that, and I think I could get better at being a DM than I think I could be a player, because it's really intimidating playing next to Dan and his damn voices, and like it's ridiculous. I'm like, I will never be there. I will never be there. It's so hard.
Well, Dan's a theater kid, all right? Don't let him harp on you too much.
Believe me,
he's a theater kid.
Demoralizing when he comes in and he's like, all right, we're gonna do a one shot and just let it riff, and he's like, oh, and he does his Irish accent, and you're just like, bro, you just came up with this character 2 seconds ago. Like,
bro, that's years of bullying to harness that power, okay? When you've been bullied for 20 years straight, then you can voice act like Dan, all right?
But what about you, Tony? What do you think?
100% I'd rather be a DM than a player. I yearn for a longish campaign as a player. I definitely want to play a wizard in a long campaign. But I would much rather be a DM than a player, 100%. I think my imagination is just wild. It's my strongest attribute as a person, like to the point where like like how rappers can freestyle, they freestyle on the radio and they just come up with like bars. I feel like I can do that on a DM level, where like I can come up with encounters and story for days, and it wouldn't take much for me to do that. Like that's how wild my imagination is.
Yeah.
So DM 100%.
Yeah. I think we're kind of in the same. I think we both like creating things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where a lot of it comes from. Being a player, you're more experiencing it, which is fun, and being able to act and stuff. I think Dan does great DMing. That dude's a player. Like he makes the entire situation hilarious.
Yes. But Dan is a great DM. He's DM'd for us a number of times. I we much prefer him as a player because he's just so much more fun. I don't know. I think he's a great player. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather have him as a player than DM.
Yeah, I think he just plays characters incredibly. Not that he can't do it in a DM setting, but I think just seeing the way that he's taken Menace is incredible. Sometimes where I'm like, can you when does Menace stop and dance start? Like,
that's what I like about when
the line
you
gets
DM.
blurred.
Like, I like when you DM because when you're learning, it's cool to watch new people DM. But I got to play alongside Dan.
Yeah.
For a long time before we started doing one shots, I was getting jealous of not playing with you guys.
Yeah.
You know? So it's cool.
Moving on to the next one, Infamous Dino DM. How do you best handle if you need / want a players to pass a check, but they only rolling low and don't pass?
Easiest question. Don't put important information behind skill checks. Just give it to them. It's the best way to move the story along. Only optional information put behind rolls or the easy path behind rolls. And what I mean by that, like, say there's a puzzle, but they need certain information to solve the puzzle, give them that information. But if there's like hints that you want them to find, put those things behind skill checks so it makes it easier for them to solve the puzzle. That's how you feed breadcrumbs to them, but never put story-driven info behind skill checks. Just let them see it. Because otherwise, if they don't pass or roll low, then you're at a standstill. You're ultimately just going to give it to them anyway, and it's going to be jarring that way. You could be like, well, after looking for a certain amount of time, you noticed this. Just give it to them, and it makes for much better roleplay and story moments.
Yeah, I think that's pretty great info. But what I would say is make failing fun. So even if it is something that they need to get, like say it's like this sword that they've been trying to get forever, and you put it behind a strength saving throw, right? Like, if they fail, make them accidentally drop it, and it's this magical glass sword that's worth thousands, and it just, like, falls down some stairs, and now they have to walk down and go pick it up. Like, don't put, like, the ability of them picking it up and, like, holding it over their head or, you know, whatever behind a skill check, but make the fail fun so that, like, even if they do roll low, it just has, like, a point to it, as opposed to, you didn't get it, or something along those lines.
Sorry. Next session.
Yeah.
Shakes.
But yeah, the other note that I had is make important information reachable, for sure, is a big one. It's just...
Or optional third rule, have them slip you a 20 for information. Make some money while you're DMing, man. Times are tough.
You know?
Another question from Infamous Dino. They've just been hitting the hard.
This is what we're talking about. Join the Discord. We could be reading your questions too.
We got plenty of people, but Infamous Dino had a lot of questions.
Hey, love it. Love to hear it.
How, and this is a good one for you as a new DM. How do you gauge encounters to make sure that they are challenging enough for the party to be entertained and have to work through it, but not so difficult or out of place that they die or lose immersion in the game?
So far, I'm not great at figuring out the CR rating to the player party numbers to make sure that the encounters are correct and that there's enough in a one-shot to get through the entire thing without having a break in between there or like any of those things.
I'm going to pause you right there. Neither does Wizards of the Coast. They have said this multiple times. The challenge rating does not make sense, and it's not comparable once you give out magic items.
So I tried to figure that all out when I first started. And then I just realized, I was like, you know what? Like, it doesn't matter. It just matters, like, is the important information in the fight? Okay, well then they can just go nuts. Like, what do I care if they two-shot the guy? Like, I'm gonna be honest, like, in the last one, I was so worried about health that I was, like, watching it, and then I was like, okay, let's see how much damage they do in the first 2 turns. And then I made the life that, you know, a number off those 2 numbers. because I was just like, it doesn't make any sense to make these first 2 encounters, which mean nothing to the story. It just tells like a little bit about the area. It's not the story that I want to tell, is them fighting these 2 crazy monsters in this first room. So like, what do I care if they die? You know what I mean? Early or later or whatever it might be. But yeah, as long as they get some important information out of it. But I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but I'm still like, again, I preference by saying I don't know the mathematical quadratic formula that it that all the professional DMs know. So I was just kind of winging it.
Here I want to throw out some tips for you. So one, always never be afraid to change numbers on the fly. Meaning, like if you feel like they're in a fight for too long, lower the health on some of the cannon fodder. You know. Also, what I like to do rounded off deaths. So if say you got a goblin with 20 health and they've been chunking at it for like 6 or 5 points of damage, if they hit it, if the thing has 9 hit points left and they deal 7 points of damage to it, just have that be the killing blow. Don't worry about the extra 2 hit points, because then there's a whole nother round of combat and it definitely makes things a slog. Another thing I would like to point out is that let's take this D&D starter kit for example, okay, which is the Mines of Fendevlar. Mechanically, great way to introduce people to D&D. It's a very easy campaign module to run. It's fun. It has interesting story, a lot of cool monsters, and a great way to introduce new players to the game. My only complaint about it is that it shotgun blasts you with all these different monsters to fight against in one area. You got Nothics, you got zombies, you got bugbears, you got goblins living so close together that they're just living in harmony. You know, you got undead skeleton. There's so much of a variety of monsters that it kind of like personally takes me out of it. But I'm a veteran person. So a new person to be like, whoa, look at all these cool monsters, man. Come up with a theme and try not to, as long as they make sense within the theme, that's how you know how many different monsters to put in there. You know, if you're doing something about demons, you have a wide variety. If you're doing like a goblin cave, you know, stay within the goblinoid family. And then maybe a rare occurrence of like a giant monster that happens to be like passing through like a bullet, or like a giant insect creature, or like a worm-like creature that just happens to be there because it's an earth monster that is hunted, that maybe occasionally goes there to get a goblin to eat or whatever.
Hey, don't forget about Koatoas. Just throw some of them in there.
Oh, Koatoas, yeah. Don't like, you know, I think in the Mines of Fendevlar, I think having a Nothic there is like really jarring. They put a reason why he's there. I think it's still an out there creature to just throw in a starter campaign.
Yeah, right.
But they do it, and I think it kind of removes me a little bit. It removes me from like the setting because of why you're actually in there.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really important to stay on theme. And I think when you do that, it makes your players more immersed because they kind of know what to expect, and it leaves room for like there's like a owl bear in this cave too, like, you know, just something. It leaves room for a gotcha.
Well said. Well said. This is from Reese/Mars. DM, can I find happiness?
No. No.
So it said, for real though, DM, how can I manage, or how do you manage your time with D&D sessions? And do you have any tips?
So what we do is when we play, since we are recording, we do a 2-hour limit, with some wiggle room. So, I mean, we've been doing it for so long that I now have like a flow. How I set up each session is I do a start section, a meat section, and the end section. And the start is, where do we leave off? What was the last thing we talked about? That's like one line of information. Like, they had left the camp with the intention of going to the town of Dillmore, right? That's where the session starts. The meat is a couple of bullet points of encounters I would like to see happen. Ultimately, the players have the choice of where they go, but have a couple of bullet points like, I would like them to meet the town mayor. I would like them to see one encounter of citizen distress. I would like them to see a blood shard, you know, things like that, and then write a few notes on how that ties in with the session. And then the end section of it is possible endings to that session. Like they see someone getting mugged, a monster attacks, and I would put like a relevant monster in there, or somebody gets hurt, depending on where they are, if they're in like a dangerous cave. So like a great example was the first episode of Arc 2, where at the end of it, Minus got stabbed, right? That was left up to a roll, but the end was roll to see who gets stabbed in the back, and it happened to land on Minus. You know, and then I wrote, in the meat section, I wrote like a couple of counters on how they would get to that point. You know, kind of guide them to the tavern at the end of the day.
Yeah. To add to that, when I did my last DM session with the one-shot, I started getting hung up on certain pieces when when the funnest part was going to be the boss. And since it was starting to go long and we were going over our session because of so many, like, I was having a hard time managing my time. That was when I was starting to learn a little bit more, is that, like, some of this other stuff didn't really matter. And, like, I should have, like, instead of let you guys figure it out yourself, I should have just, like, okay, so you guys are done with this room. Let's, you guys see the next room and you start going down the hallway. I should have, like, kind of scooched you guys through as opposed to letting you, you know, move, which I think is okay in a lot of situations. If there's nothing particular in there, it's okay to be not like heavy-handed, but a little bit of like, okay, you've seen everything in this room, let's move on to the next one. Like, not say it, but kind of guide them into it so that it doesn't waste as much time. But I think, Tony, you got the next one.
Jared, what software do you use to keep track of battles or PC positions? PC is a play character.
We use Roll20.
Yeah, keep it simple.
It's great. And then what is the software we use to do the maps? Incarnate?
Oh, yeah.
I mean that's a little extra.
Things.
But I think Roll20 is the way to move the characters. So being able to, you know, have a little token on the map, move it around, it works wonderfully. It's I have no complaints with it. And then you can also do really cool things, and they're starting to upgrade it a little bit. Like, for a while it was kind of bare bones, but now you can actually do the lighting, so where the piece actually gives light from it, so that when they go into a room it kind of shows up their vision, which is really neat. And
dynamic
then that way,
lighting.
Yeah, dynamic lighting, and you can hide things behind walls and stuff like that, which is really cool. But yeah, the Incarnate, the only reason I bring it up is that it can set a map on there, and there's lots of them that you can download and use for free. And they're beautiful, and then you can just upload them into there, and you're ready to go, honestly. And you can just send that link to anyone you want. Boom, you're ready to go.
Yeah, Roll20 is definitely the way to go if you're playing, like we play on a weekly basis, and making maps, you know, takes up a little bit of time, but if you ever need like a quick one, you can just draw on there. I've always wanted to use Foundry, but Foundry's pretty involved, and like if I need to come up with something on the fly, I think Roll20 just handles it better. Yeah. And then we used D&D Beyond for combat tracking. I know a lot of people have different feelings about it. It's just, I think it's good for what it is, and that's it. Keep it simple.
We do use D&D Beyond for our Patreon games. How do you feel about the two as far as...
D&D Beyond Maps is still a little bit clunky, but it gets better like every day. I will say they do like updates. I think it's good right now for like quick games. If you just need to draw on there, I like how the tokens are there. I can see it being a paywall issue in time to come, in the coming days, especially once they launch their new virtual tabletop. Everything's going to be behind a paywall. I use a lot of homebrew creatures. I don't think it'll be very flexible in that front because I make my own tokens for that. And it just seems like it's going to be a bit of a slog once again. I think it's going to be like using Foundry. So since we play on a week to week and you guys are in an open world, I think Roll20 is probably where we're going to stay unless we're doing like modules and everything just comes to you pre-built.
Yeah, so Roll20, if you want to sponsor us, just let us know. We're just a little guy in a big big ponds, just trying to make it here.
I hated you for a long time, Roll20, but you grew on me after
Yeah.
a while. You fixed your stuff. You fixed the coding. You got the, you know what I'm saying? You really earned your place in my heart. And I say that with only half hatred, all right?
All right. This is another one from Jarvis, MK2LXL. Man,
Jarvis Mach 2 extra large.
there you go.
That's how I read.
DM Tony, how do you deal with the crippling sadness and anger as your players do some random crap instead of the thing you prepared for? He's still hurting.
The sadness never leaves you. Let's just put that out there. But I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I don't want to reveal the curtain too much. Sometimes you just gotta pick the thing up and move it somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? If there's something that you really want them to see that's over here, but they go over here, you pick the thing up, put it in front of them. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to keep the main story going. But I'm neurotic. One, I know how to gaslight them to go the way I wanted to. I only had to do that like once or twice, but I know how to like manipulate them to like, are you sure you don't want to go this way? And then they'll go that way. I think I begged them once, like, please don't look down this way. It's irrelevant at this point. We did that with the White Dragon, actually. After you guys had fought the White Dragon, you went into his lair, and I'm like, God, I'm just letting you know right now, there's nothing else of interest here. We need to get out. We need to get out of the cave. I would say 85% of the time, I have a counter. I have like already plotted where everything is, and if they go this way, I'm prepared for it. If they go this way, I'm prepared for it, and I always have a chart of random encounters ready to go in case they find the magical third door that I didn't even prep for, and they just find another way that I didn't even account for, and I'm ready to go from there. But that's my own like neuroticism put into play. So
I will say, just with the limited like one shots and things, the small things that you guys didn't find or like didn't figure out, like at the end it's pretty great, because if it's a one shot you could just be like, oh, you guys didn't do this, I had this prepared for you, and blah blah blah, which is fun. I couldn't imagine that in a campaign, being like, okay, I gotta keep it together, can't say anything.
This next question comes from Lola. Any tips on finding a good group to play with? Mine keep getting canceled because everyone is so busy.
It's so tough. I'm gonna be honest. The older people get, the harder it is to schedule time with them. So I love playing board games, but it used to be so much easier to get a group of people. We used to play at least once a week. And at sometimes it was like 2 or 3 times a week. And now with everyone's schedules, it is so incredibly hard to get people. I think with D&D, board games, it could be a little bit easier. We have done this where we've played Tabletop Simulator, things like that. And with D&D, you could do it. It's just it's so much more impactful when it's like people in a room just chit-chatting. But I wish I had a better tip. I'm sure Tony would has something for you, but it's just doom and gloom from where I'm at.
Yeah, the best way to get people to play with you is by gunpoint. But
there
if you don't have a piece, this is what you can do. I went to local game shops. I ended up working as a DM to run one shots, make a little cash money on the side. But playing one shots at a local game shop. Okay. If you don't have one of those near you, if you do, you can go there, start playing with people. The people that you feel comfortable playing with on a regular basis, get to know them, and then you just kind of poach them, and you make your own game with them. And maybe they have 1 or 2 friends that you can play with. Another way to do it is going on Roll20. Roll20 has like free games that people host and paid games. You go on there, sign yourself up for a game, spend the $15, play with some people. Maybe they're cool. Then you message them on the side, like, hey, I kind of want to play our own game, and then make friends that way. What I used to do is I used to go on Facebook, and there's a bunch of Facebook groups like Dungeons and Dragons of New Jersey, pork roll D&D players, if you will. And, people are always looking for players. Don't get me wrong, if you take the internet approach, you're probably going to find let's keep it a buck. We get less than desirable people, but that's what vetting is for. Okay, just look for players responsibly. But local game shops and Roll20 paid games, do it once or twice, and I'm sure you'll find some people who will join you after that.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that, like, if I wanted to go out and find people to play board games, I think that's what I would do. Local game shops, anytime I go in there, they're like, oh, you play this board game, and he'll hold up some, like, crazy monstrosity that I'm about to buy, like Twilight Imperium, the expansion or something. They're like, oh, we have a group that plays this blah 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 day. It's like, oh,
I've tried looking for those groups. They don't exist where I live. I'm so upset. I'm trying to look for a local Twilight Imperium scene, and it's not here. It's not here.
Yo, shout out to Twilight Imperium. All right, Hunter Beastman is our next comment. I'm working on a campaign for the first time, but I'm afraid my players are gonna blow through what I prepared because it's a 5-hour session. What should I improvise if that happens?
What you need is not necessarily more content, let's say, or encounters. What you need is good ways to fill in time. And really, that kind of falls on your players. And as a DM, you want to help narrate those things or nudge those things. So don't get me wrong. There's sometimes I go to a session with these guys and I'm underprepared. I'm like, oh man, they're blowing through this stuff way quicker than I thought, or it's vice versa. Sometimes they're going too slow, which is neither good nor bad thing on either account. But what I'll do is, like, if I feel that they're going too fast and they have like a rest point, I ask them, like, what's going through your mind right now? What's your character feeling? Does he have any thoughts? Does he have any concerns? And then I'll have them like try to riff off each other. This isn't always like a time extending tactic, but it is a great one to have, and just have them role play, and if they're talking to each other in character, especially for 5 hours, just sit back, let the magic happen, let them talk about their thing. Maybe if they're like bored if their characters are bored at like a campsite, have them play a game, but then like really make them play that game at the table. Like take like a D&D deck or playing card deck or dice and let them like do like a quick round and get some gambling done, and like that'll create memories within the characters themselves. But have them role play. Find reasons for them to role play. Another great way to fill in time, make a random encounter table for yourself. Things that could happen. If they're walking in a forest, Xanther's Guide to Everything will solve this issue. They have random encounter tables. The new DM's guys got random encounter tables. There's the Game Master's Book to Random Encounters. There's a whole... these guys are fantastic. All of their books are absolute bangers. Here's an entire book of random encounters that you can do for traveling. They're in dungeons. They're in a city. They're talking to people. You want a mystical goblin that sells them magic stuff randomly on the road can appear. This, if you need some source material, you're not that creative, pick this bad boy up. You probably get it for like $20-25. Very, very much worth it. Can help you fill in those 5-hour gaps on the fly and go from there. I mean, there's random encounter tables, TLDR.
I would say the only thing I would add to that is if you got the time to prep, make a puzzle. Like, it will eat up so much time. Just people, even the most simple one.
Puzzle.
Yes, very, very easy type of thing. Like, super simple. Make sure that you have bullet points to give them hints, and then just in case it's way too hard, have outs in case they can't solve it, which hopefully they can because it's super simple. But the amount of time it eats up, and I think the camaraderie that it builds when they do solve something like that in character is great. So that would be my, if you're trying to find a way to fill time, that's what I'd go with.
But Jared, counterpoint, what if you're just terrible at making puzzles? What then?
Oh man, bro, I could tell you. Oh, if you go to our TikTok, D&D pod on TikTok, you have all sorts of ideas on puzzles. And if that doesn't happen, I think Tony's got something in his hands that's gonna...
Traps, Puzzles, and Dungeons. Look at that. A whole section on puzzles ready to go for you.
I want that book so bad.
By the same people. It's great. Game Master's book of whatever. They got it. Not sponsored. Probably
they
better
should
than actual Dungeons and Dragons books you could buy out there to answer your questions.
Just saying, we're a small podcast, so hey, if you guys want to sponsor it.
Oh, yeah, Game Masters. If you want to toss me a couple of alt covers, if you got them.
It's too good. But hopefully that answers your question.
Next question comes from Papa Goblin _ DMs. Has DMing for a podcast changed how you DM both in terms of session prep and the story structure?
So, yes. Because you are on... We only get, like Tony said earlier, like 2, maybe 3 hours with gameplays of everyone's schedule. So, like, it's a tight window. So you have to really make sure everything is trimmed up in a, real tight as far as everything is considered. So, yeah, it is tough. I'm sure Tony has a lot more to add to it, but just my limited time with it, I was like, oh man, everything that I've done has gone way longer than I think it is. So, but Tony, what do you got?
Yeah, when you're working with a specific time frame, so when you're doing a podcast, as you know, you have a finite amount of time. It can't go on forever, and if it goes on forever, people might get bored. You have to entertain at the end of the day. However, we do not railroad our stuff. None of our stuff is scripted. It just comes down to like player synergy. Like, I knew Jared, Dan, and Alec years before we actually started playing Dungeons & Dragons with each other, so I think we're ahead of the game there. We just kind of know how we play games together, and we work with each other well. As a DM, when I have that 2-hour time limit, I write down a bunch of bullet points all the way. That's how I session prep. It's all bullet points and maybe a couple of key phrases that a bad guy would say to amp up his coolness. But ultimately, it comes down to making sure every episode has that one piece of information that's important to give to them to help them push forward to the next session, and everything else kind of falls into place. That's really what it is. Making sure that every episode is worth listening to, and try not to have those filler episodes like, oh yeah, they're just fighting here, let's just keep it going. Give something for them to eat.
I think our biggest... The cross we bear, I think, with our podcast is that each episode has a beginning, middle, and an end, and the end is a cliffhanger usually. And it's not that and it all makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? You can listen to one episode and get like a great story out of it. But I think with maybe other podcasts, and I only listen to the best, so I only listen to ours. No, I'm just kidding. But I think a lot of the other podcasts, they could literally just go on and then end and be like, okay, that's where we're going to cut it off. And it doesn't end on a cliffhanger. Or it doesn't end on something that's enticing or exciting. And then it just picks back up, somewhere random. And I think that that's kind of the quality that we strive for, is that we want to have like that good pacing, so that you feel like, oh man, what's going to happen next? Like, let's, make it more exciting and things like that. So I think it's a good... Yeah. I think the way that we do it is the way it should be done. And yes, it does put a lot more strain on our poor DM, but tough
cookies. Yeah, I don't want to sit here like lie, be like, yeah, you just learn. You just learn and you go and you do your best. It's a learned skill that has taken me quite a long time, that I still missed the mark on in several episodes. Like, I try not to make combat go longer than an episode, but sometimes it does. And I try to come up with a good cliffhanger in the middle of combat to keep you guys interested. It's a learned skill, and it's very difficult, and it will change from table to table. What will work with these guys will not work in a home game that I have or at another table somewhere else. It's just something you learn with the people you play with.
I was just, speaking of, not to counter your point, but I was just listening to episode, what is it, 57 through 62. It is one combat scene. It's the one in the castle with the.
That was like an epic.
It was the most epic whatever. But I was just listening to it, and I'm just like, man, that was so much combat in.
Yeah, that was a siege on a keep though, and like they were still story-driven.
No, and that was the best part. Is that it still tells a story, even though it was all still combat. So it was.
Yeah, it was definitely the longest one. That was definitely like, okay, I need to. This doesn't work. I need to fix
honestly,
this in the long run.
Like I think it does. I think it's hard to pull off. Like I think is the thing is I think it worked really well then, because if I was trying to think of our biggest, most epic fight, like that's easily top 3.
I would say I would agree.
Like I can't like
Arc 4 is my favorite, man. I loved every
is
second of
that
Arc
4.
4. Yeah, Shadowfell.
Yeah.
At every moment of Shadowfell was so fun for me.
Yeah.
Never a bore. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I mean, it did last multiple sessions, but like that's still like that's easily top 3 for sure. I mean, it was so fun, but
well, I'm glad you like it. Hint at the next.
I'm ready. Armos, I don't know if you heard that speech Armos did, but he's fired up.
Yeah, he is.
Literally on fire, probably at this point. All right. Is this our final one? This is the final one. All right, here we go. Infamous Dino. Question DM. How do you go about picking out monsters and setting up encounters for your campaign?
This is a little hard to answer because I don't want to like spoil anything. However, it goes off like whatever theme I'm thinking about, and not deviating from that theme, as mentioned before. One, I want to give you guys exciting monsters to fight. Personally, I'm all for the monster hunter route, where like there's a giant monster and everyone's trying to fight the big evil monster. I do throw in multiple enemies like soldiers, 1-to-1 and all that. But I'm really all about the big monster fighting the group of you and trying to make that the challenge in itself. I don't really have like a formula other than like not going off topic too much. I
was gonna say, I think you hit on it earlier where you're saying like if you're in a cave, don't throw a Nothic in there or just out of the random. Just keep them, consistent from where you're at. Make sure that they're, if we're in Shadowfell, it makes sense that they're Shadowfell things. If you're in your first cave, it doesn't make sense to throw, crazy.
Yeah, make it make sense. Make it make sense to the environment. And in any environment, you're allowed one gotcha monster, I would say. And that will never throw off the campaign because there are wandering monsters. But make it make sense. And a lot of the stuff, it is a homebrew campaign, so like I have a crazy imagination, so I can come up with like some pretty cool monsters on the fly if I ever need to. But yeah, it's just really about like keeping it on brand.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think if you're going to be starting a campaign, think of the monsters you want, like make a list, and these are your must need to have in there, and then start building out pieces from there. Like, does it make sense that a dragon has goblins around it? Yeah, maybe, but does it make more sense that they have, other kinds of,
kobolds?
Yeah, things like that. So, stuff like that. So, maybe go that route, work backwards, as opposed to, trying to build your world around the monster. Or, build your monster first and then build the world around it.
You know what? I'm actually gonna point out another creator's video. Dungeon Craft made a great video about a module called the Lost City, and he made a great way of getting the players right into the action. And a big change he did was that he actually removed a lot of the monsters from the module to make it make sense. And what he did, not to give too much spoilers, but he made the players captives within the temple that's underneath like a city of sand, right? It's a giant temple that becomes a city. And he's like, you have 2 actual gameplay hours to find water or you're dead. And everything they found there was no goblins or anything. They were all just cannibalistic humans. You know, and by removing monsters, they made it scarier because like there's all these cannibals running around trying to get them, and it's like this whole place is swarming with them, like we're in their home, and it just makes you so much more immersed. I highly recommend checking out Dungeon Craft Lost City video. It's a really good watch, and it really helps with this question: how to keep monsters, what monsters to use, and how to keep it themed and thematical with your encounters and campaign.
Yeah, I think also to that point is that all because it's a certain monster doesn't mean that it has to act like that monster. You could throw in curveballs. You could throw in blood shards. Could be a bugbear with a blood shard. All of a sudden, how does that act as opposed to a normal blood shard? You know, type of thing. So, if you do like a monster and you do like its stat block, or you don't have to listen to it, you can make up your own stuff. So
it's just words on a page, man. It can't tell you what to do. It can't bully you, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, this thing's too hard, make it easier.
Go freestyle.
No one can tell you, man. No one can tell you what to do. No one's going to kick down your door, sit at your Dungeons and Dragons table, and tell you what you're doing is wrong. Unless you live stream it. Then people will tell you you're wrong all the time. And that's why there's a mute button.
There you go.
Don't let them hurt your feelings.
What is that? I think that's all the questions that we had.
That's all the questions we have prepared for today. Yes. I like this. I like doing this. We can answer a lot of these questions.
100%. Like, I enjoy our community so much, so it's great to be able to hear what they're thinking, so we can hopefully help them out in some way.
Oh, we have one more question from Dan, actually. Dan wants to know.
Oh?
Dan had asked, how do I import my Holy Avenger from another campaign? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go to another person's table. Even if it's a one-shot at a local game shop, don't bring a pre-made character with full magic item. Nobody likes that. No, everybody disapproves. Nobody likes that.
I couldn't imagine. Like, I think if I was gonna say one note to end on, the thing that I've noticed within D&D is that when I first started, I wanted to do all the combat like really, really well, and I realized that some of the most fun is not doing combat well. But by that I mean, like, you don't have to mid-max your character. You know what I mean? You don't have to have all the best stats. It's great to have flaws and be silly.
Be silly. That's what we're gonna.
You don't need Holy Avengers when you're gonna go play with your friends.
If you come to my one shot and try to import a Holy Avenger from another campaign, I'm flipping the table on top of you. This is a threat.
But if you guys haven't joined the Discord yet, please do make sure to click the link in the description if you feel like supporting us on Patreon, Discord. If you want to just come in and say hi, let us know. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, you know, I hear that we just passed 600 reviews. I don't know if that's true, but if not...
Oh, I said we were close.
Okay, good.
Brother, I said we were close.
Leave a 5-star review. Brother. It really helps us out. Again, we're just small fries in a big pond. We're just trying to make it in this Big Mac world.
Dear patrons, thank you for supporting us in every which way. Your support has grown so much, in fact, that the SIDS have been sprouting up around Umbrea like crazy. So many have come my way in your likeness, and I have sent them with Sid Sr. so that he may escort them safely to you. First up are the Shadow Sids, the Dread. Sid Dread just showed up at our camp with emerald burning eyes. Since we don't know where you are, I bid him the best of luck and had Sir Sid, our armorer, craft him the most incredible suit of tiny Sid armor. I hope you like it. Alara Dawnstar, you would not believe the Sid that came into our camp the other day. Dawn Sid has been teaching some new recruits hand-to-hand combat and also bested even Sid himself in many games of Dragon Chess. When you see her, please give her a mask fitting of such a cunning warrior. Hello, Reese. Fair warning, when you meet Ever Sid, he might be in a bit of a sour mood. You see, the other Sids accidentally used Eversid's journal for arts and crafts paper, so please give him one of yours. Also, I have sent you a coupon for Numi's shop if you ever find yourself back in Sanlo. Julius Kendrick, for the love of all the gods above this material plane, please take this shady hooded Sidric off of our hands. He is scaring all the other Sids and raising little mice and snake skeletons from the surrounding forests. I respect all magic, but this is not for us. Next are the Sid Shard Bandits. Morgan Ulfil, I hope your fox wants a friend. Sidfil is on their way to you now with their own little rock fox companion. They both seem super stealthy and will be able to help you with all your covert operations near the Red City. Artemis, you have a new recruit. Artis Sid has been protecting some of the weaker citizens these past few weeks and even got some expert training from Sid X, our martial arts instructor and leader of the Sid specialists. He's also really good at the xylophone, but I don't think he taught Artis Sid how to play that. Sly, you may be the stealthiest person I have ever met, and those traits show true in the Sly Sid that popped up recently. It has a little hood it made for itself and a bow that shoots multiple thorns all at the same time. I think with good training, you can teach him to shoot a blueberry off of a caterpillar's head. Jade Greyfire. Sid Greyfire has been training non-stop with Sid Sr. Jr., our inspiring speech specialist. I'm going to wait a few weeks before letting him leave because he still needs to work on speaking with his diaphragm. In due time, you two will be sharing many tales of your adventures and inspiring others. And now are the Sid Jick College alumni. Your contributions are very thoughtful. Luke Trebek. Your inventions at the Sidjic College have inspired Sid Trebek to work on their own trinkets for the Sid Brigade. Sid, that's Sid with 2 Ds, is our item specialist and has given your Sid some components to bring to you at the college to help further your learning. Craig Dawnbringer, I heard you were struggling with your magic lessons, and so is Sid Dawnbringer. Or at least that's what I thought until a couple weeks ago. Sid Dawnbringer has been casting powerful spells all of a sudden like it's nothing. I swear I saw a tiny little rock bunny on his shoulder the other day, but I probably just need more sleep. David LaChance, I hope Sid Chance finds his way to you. It is a very strong Sid that has been training with Sid Alpha, leader of our elite task force, Slag Sitters. They wanted him to join, but Sid Chance said it wanted to train under you before it would be ready for that kind of commitment. Punk, I hope Spunk has made it to you already. That's the name it gave itself after tattooing itself and heading out with a band made up of a rat drummer, pixie lead singer, and twig blight bassist. He is the lead guitarist, of course, and I hope he doesn't get too distracted while on tour. Mongo, Sido has just arrived and has been looking everywhere for you. By that I mean they have gotten lost about 50 times looking for you. Sid Sr. has picked one of his best scouts to escort Sido to your current location on time for the first time this time. Saint Chaos. Sid Chaos has been brewing mead for the Sids, and it is unbelievably bad. Not going to lie, it is really bad. The Sids threw up pebbles everywhere, but Drell seems to be unaffected. We are sending him your way for brewery classes. Sergio Rodriguez. Sidio Rodriguez has signed up for all kinds of classes at Sid University, but I worry his interests are a bit too broad. He's taking spellcasting, fighting, draconic, painting, ballet, Artificer 101, and much, much more. Hopefully, when he sees you, you can help him figure out what kind of Sid he wants to be. And last but not least are Humbrea's Sidos. Charcoal Dart Sid is currently wearing a beret and painting a portrait for Kazu Sid, a little frost-covered dragon pebble breathing snow. Thomocles, the Sid Barian, looks angry all the time with permanent twig eyebrows, but is really just trying to give Sid with Glass a big hug. Don't run away, Sid with Glass, he's friendly, I promise. Drowned Sid just came through camp dragging a severed orc's head behind him. I pointed them in your direction as John Carroll waved goodbye while riding it. Johnny Tar Sid and Native Nightmare Sid were having a fight with each other until Lone Star, a gelatinous-looking Sid, came in and engulfed them. Kazlan Sid has been sitting sad in a corner, or maybe that's just sweat from running so much. Eris Insidus gets really mad when Reginald tries to bully other Sids and looks eerily just like you, Eris Insidus. Hart, I found this awesome Sid that shape changes into little rock animals, and it's been looking for you. Ren Sidley and Sidscore Storm have become great friends and cannot wait to meet their big bugbear and dragonborn counterparts. Treat them with care, Ren Grizzly and Isker Storm. Your support has reached so many Sids. So many that a top-heavy Sid has appeared that looks somewhat like the letter P. Interesting. On its back are magical runes that, when translated from Dwarven to Common, reads, "Visit patreon.com/DND404 if you want to read your name read out loud by Minis and the gang." Yep, it says all that, the whole thing on Patreon Sid's back. How wild. Okay, love y'all. Bye.